This is Kimberly Quinn, host of the Mindcraft podcast, and I can't tell you how much fun I have had doing this podcast. I started when the world closed over the pandemic in an attempt to spread some positivity out there and give people some strategies to enhance their own well-being and reduce anxiety and all of that. Now, 2 years later, we're still going strong and now listened to by 52 countries across the world. And I've even helped some of my students get going with their own podcasts. It's super easy to do. And I'll tell you, if you haven't heard about Anchor by Spotify, it is the easiest way to make a podcast with everything you need all in one place. I'll just explain for you. Anchor has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. When hosting on Anchor, you can distribute your podcast on listening platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. And best of all, Anchor is totally free. Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. It is a ball. Start today. Greetings, Minecrafters, and welcome to another Minecraft audio podcast episode. My name is Kimberly Quinn, and I am ecstatic to be on my back deck right here with little Giovanni in this gorgeous fall weather again. And today, what I really wanted to have a discussion with you about is becoming an anthropologist. Just hold right there. You might say, "Look, is she going off the edge?" No, I mean, I could, I suppose, but no, not today. So I was inspired by Richard Carlson. You know that I've talked about him before with the "Don't Sweat the Small Stuff" series, and he says it's all small stuff, right? Which he's right. For the most part, rarely do we get that, thank God, that, big bad phone call. Mostly it's all small stuff. And I liked his idea of becoming an anthropologist because I'm also a big fan of separating the person from the behavior. We've done lots of Minecraft episodes and had all these discussions about separating people from behavior and also kind of resisting the urge to bite the hook, which is that Sanskrit word shenpa. Remember that? So here goes Richard. This is how he starts us out. He says, anthropology is a science dealing with man and his origins. In this strategy, however, I'll conveniently redefine anthropology as being interested without judgment in a way that other people choose to live and behave. I love that. Okay, so that's separating people from behavior. No one said it's easy, by the way, before you hang up on me. Maybe, of course, you can. No one said it's easy, and especially given that the holidays are coming, I think this is, sort of super appropriate timing because obviously during the holidays we're thrown together with people we may or may not like, anywhere along the spectrum of that, all the way to love them to the moon and to the stars and beyond, and to the other end of the spectrum where we might have, made a dartboard out of their face. So anywhere, hopefully not, but anywhere in between. And so this is a good conversation to have because, again, we're not saying give people a pass. That's not what we're saying. We're saying to just step out of the current for a minute. So then Richard continues. He said, this strategy is geared toward developing your compassion as well as a way of becoming more patient. And I'll tell you right now, when I first read this before getting on the call with all of you here, I thought, oh God, there's the word patient again. And I will, I definitely, like the rest of us, have many strengths. And that said, the good Lord threw lots of gifts in my gift bag upon arriving on this earth. And I have to tell you humbly that patience is not one of them. So I saw that word and I'm like, oh, here we go. Another, big exercise for me. And then Richard says, beyond that, however, being interested in the way other people act is a way of replacing judgments with loving kindness. This also brings in to this discussion many previous discussions on mindfulness and also the sentence or two before that with non-judgment. So mindfulness, remember, is not about sitting in a lotus position with your hands up on your lap and eating yogurt in a cave like a Zen monk. Not to offend monks. I love monks, actually. And you might wonder, some of these annoying people are what pushed them to being a monk in the first place, maybe, just kind of inspired by all that behavior. So mindfulness is different because mindfulness, remember, is being present in the moment as John Kabat-Zinn would say, in this moment as if your life depended on it, because it does. This is the only life we have. And John Kabat-Zinn would also talk about being the non-judgmental piece of mindfulness as being huge, because we can, be washing the dishes, trying to be mindful, being in the shower, trying to be mindful, sitting on the back deck with your golden retriever, trying to be mindful. And, it's easy for things, an anxious thought to zip by. And what's different with mindfulness than it is with other meditations, which in mindfulness really isn't a meditation, technically speaking, I wouldn't say, is instead of trying to create a thought vacuum, it's okay, there goes an anxious thought. So what? Who cares? And welcome to the human race, right? So this plays into what we're talking about with becoming an anthropologist, because when we get better at not judging ourselves mindfully, when we practice mindfulness as much as we can in the day, which all that means is being present once again, we automatically, just naturally, organically become less judgmental of other people. And also that loving kindness thing is also part of mindfulness, because when we learn to be loving and kind and compassionate towards ourselves, we inherently become loving and kind and compassionate to other people. Remember, we're not talking about perfection, we're talking about progress. And so then Richard says, when you are genuinely curious about the way someone reacts or the way they feel about something, it's unlikely that you will also be annoyed. In this way, becoming an anthropologist is a way of becoming less frustrated by the actions of others. So again, this is about just trying to understand them, not giving them a pass. Somebody, could have had something, gotten that bad phone call, anywhere on the scale of bad phone call. There's obviously the far end, which would be something absolutely tragic, but there's the whole middle, and there's, the whole other side where maybe they just got something they were looking forward to. Maybe they just started dating someone and that person just canceled and it's only the third date and they were excited. It could have also been a really good friend who's up for business and they had planned, even they haven't seen you in 2 years, they're trying to wiggle you in between the conference because they're already here and it's paid for and let's try to see you. And then the first meeting ran over and now there's no time and she's flying back. I mean, and that's just so enormously disappointing. And it makes somebody, it might make them disappointed. And obviously I just said that, sorry. And also frustrated and sad. The expectation was there and now they're not going to see the friend they haven't seen in 3 years or whatever it is. And again, it's not giving someone a pass, but when we try to look what's behind the curtain, I think it at least helps take some air out of the balloon. It helps to take some air out of the balloon. And that also brings in something that just came into my mind in this minute, which is Don Miguel Ruiz's 4 agreements, because I'm a big fan of his work. And one of the 4 agreements, which is my favorite one, is not to take anything personally. Because remember, we are all, the main characters in our own play on our own stage. Again, it doesn't give anyone a pass. And that said, 99.9 of what anyone says, 99.9% of what anyone says about us is about them. Think about it. It's a projection of what's going on in their own head. So this is another reason to not dig in with the claws, even if it's silently and they don't know. You don't want to dig in overtly or covertly because it's just not worth it. Okay, so Richard continues. He says, when someone acts in a way that seems strange to you, rather than reacting in your usual way, such as, I can't believe they would do that, or let's say that, or whatever, instead, say something to yourself like, I see, that must be the way she sees things in her world. Very interesting. And you know what? This is something Wayne Dyer says frequently, and you know what a fan of him I am. And, obviously we're not talking about the far end of severe lacerations. We're talking about the rest of it. And the rest of it's the majority, right? People can be petty. People can say stupid things, right? And rather than react, because reacting, even as, Isaac Newton would say, an object in motion stays in motion unless acted on by a force. For every reaction we give them is another. There's going to be a counter action, counter reaction, or whatever. I think that's maybe redundant, but it's kind of like we keep it going like dominoes. Whereas when we can take the high road, not saying that they're right or giving them a pass, but just in our heads think, okay, something's going on with them. Take a deep breath and move on. And then he says, in order for this strategy to help you, I like this whole anthropologist kind of analogy. It's just really working for me. Okay, in order for this strategy to help you, you have to be genuine. I mean, we have to be genuine anyway. The only alternative to genuine is fake. I'm not a fan of the fakies. I'm just saying, it's not a judgment about them as a person. I never, and actually I just caught myself because they're separating people from behavior. It's not the fakies, it's the fake behavior of good people, okay? Or maybe they're not even not so good people, but it's the behavior of fake that I don't like. And then Richard says there's a fine line between being interested and being arrogant, as if secretly you believe that you're way better. And we don't want that. Even if you're the only one who knows, that is just such a low vibration emotion. Like the arrogance thing is so low vibe. And, if you're listening to all these Minecraft episodes, this means that there's something tugging at you. And I don't mean just the Minecraft episodes either. If you're tapping into any of, some other good stuff on YouTube that's all about, advancing along the authentic path in whatever ways it is, there's something in you tugging and pulling at you for something better and to live your best life and live on that high flying frisbee, as I like to say, arrogance is way below that. And we don't want to, don't want to reduce, like, we don't want to jump off the high flying frisbee to be in that place, right? We're an observer, an anthropological observer. Like, wow, something must be going on with them. Clearly they have a different point of view. Maybe something was said to them when they were younger. Maybe it's something culturally different from me that I don't understand. Ba 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 ba. And it just helps. Because we don't want to think even secretly that we're better. That's just isn't a good way to go. It's just bad energy. It's just not good karma. We want to jump on the karma train moving forward. Again, even if we're the only ones who know, because it's an energy thing. So people can feel that stuff too. Okay, and then Richard says, recently I was at a local shopping mall with my 6-year-old daughter. A group of punk rockers, boy, that dates this a little bit. I'm going to guess 80s, right? A group of punk rockers walked by with orange spiked hair and tattoos covering much of their bodies. My daughter immediately asked me, Daddy, why are they dressed up like that? Are they in costumes? Years ago, I would have felt very judgmental and frustrated about these young people, as if their way was wrong and my more conservative way was right. I would have blurted out some judgmental explanation to my daughter and passed along to her my judgmental views. Pretending what did I say? Yeah. Pretending to be an anthropologist, however, has changed my perspective a great deal. It's made me softer. I said to my daughter, I'm not really sure, but it's interesting how different we all are, isn't it? She said, yeah, but I like my own hair. Rather than focusing on the behavior and continuing to give it energy, we both dropped it and continued to enjoy our time together. And obviously, this is dated in the 80s because certainly now, I think we've come a long way with accepting differences, and hear me clearly that I'm not saying we've arrived. We've got a lot of work to do still, to continue to accept people exactly the way as they are, right? And I still, I'm not going to edit that out because I think it's actually a good example, even if it's old, because it's a dad being very honest decades ago when the times were different, that he is being honest about his sort of inclination to judge, and he didn't say anything to her like, you don't hang around with those sorts, and that kind of thing. He was honest about it as a parent. I think that's pretty good. It's really good. And with his daughter, and it left in a place, even if we fast forward into the 2020s, we could pick easily, probably most of us could find an example, a few decades later that's very similar to this, because even if we don't tell people because we're embarrassed, we had some thought cross our mind. You're like, where did that come from? I don't own that. I don't think that way. Where did that thought come from? And then we say, wow, when we really kind of examine it, we can then, show ourselves some compassion and remind ourselves that we can't control the thoughts that zip across our head because they just do. We can control what we do with those thoughts. We can control how we act upon them or not, right? And my one of my dear friends who's since passed, Wayne Dyer, he also didn't know he was a friend of mine. He's an Oprah in my friend circle, along with Brene Brown and some others. But man, Wayne Dyer, that guy, he's got wisdom like I've never heard before. He's just amazing. Also, his voice feels like a massage to me. So sometimes I listen to him on the way in for two reasons. One, because he's so loaded with wisdom, and the other one because I find his voice so incredibly soothing. It feels like this, just like a massage, just energetically. So Anyway, he has talked about that a lot with even when somebody gives you some pretty solid snark, and then he has said, okay, well, that's an interesting perspective. And I think that's such a neutral way to comment. It's not condescending. It's not saying something that's kind of implying, alluding, or whatever, that even though it's under like a backhanded something, like they say, like you're saying, it's not what you're saying, it's how you're saying it, sort of thing. So it's not like you're implying that you're really better under the guise of a politically correct statement or something. When you say, wow, that's a different perspective I haven't heard before, it's very interesting. I mean, that's just so neutral. It's just different and it's interesting. You're not committing to, I don't agree with you. You're not saying I might agree with you. I should agree with you. Do I care if I agree with you? It's not saying any of that. It's just I'm acknowledging another human ball of energy having different neurological energy going through their brain, producing thoughts. It's just different neurons wired together, spitting out different neurological results of thinking, and that's it. And that's why I really like how Wayne Dyer says that. And then lastly, Richard says, when you're interested in other perspectives, it doesn't imply even slightly that you're advocating. I just kind of said that. I certainly wouldn't choose a punk rock lifestyle or suggest it to anyone else. At the same time, however, it's really not my place to judge it either. Again, 80s example. One of the cardinal rules of joyful living is that judging others takes a great deal of energy and without exception pulls you away from where you want to be. Now, isn't that the truth? The punk rock thing was just, like I said, a little kind of aged out, but I like how Richard wound up with pulls you away from where you want to be. So here's the thing, is it pulls us off our authentic path. Pinches us off, as Abraham Hicks would say, pinches us off, because we're never detached. We're just kind of pinched off a little bit, but we go astray. It's kind of like being on a cut grass, like a nice hiking path, and stepping into a pricker bush. Like, oh, that didn't feel good. Back on the path, kind of thing. And Wayne Dyer talks a lot about, and also some of the other great thinkers talk about too, whatever we do to other people, we do to ourselves. So when we're passing judgment on someone, again, even if it's in the silence of our minds and no one else knows, only we know, still the message is the same. That says way more about the judger than it does about the judgee. And it brings us down. It lowers our vibe. And, we don't hopefully want that. We don't want that. We want to be on our high-flying disc, living our very best life, which we're going to be derailed if we're judging people. Again, not agreeing necessarily, just judging. And another good one that I like, and I often say some of the one-liners from the 12-step program, and that's just live and let live, and it's also kind of Buddhist, right? Because detachment, they say when you attach to something, then there's the struggle. Live and let live. And if somebody's living their life in a way you don't agree with, well, here's the good news. It's their life, not yours. And even if they're being, self-destructive, it doesn't mean not to reach out and help a loved one in need. I'm not saying that. I'm saying if something's kind of continued, just maybe malicious verbal behavior or whatever, you got to get out of the path of that stuff. Just get out of the path without judgment, and let it kind of take care of itself. And that's really it. So becoming an anthropologist is a really good way of saying to be an observer, a non-judgmental observer, to not engage with shenpa and dig our hooks in with somebody. We talked about the non-judgment, the detachment, and the live and let live. Just observe, just like Jane Goodall with the chimps, right? Just watching from beyond, watching how they behave, and just take some good notes. I do a lot of these positive psychology experiments. Nobody even knows. I'm out in the world and I'm just kind of watching and taking it in and doing all kinds of smiley experiments and things like that. So that's it. Be an anthropologist, be a non-judgmental observer, and just don't dig in. Just live and let live. Be you and stay you on that high-flying disc. This is Kimberly Quinn signing off from Northern Vermont. Have a mindful day.